Hey scholars, so today we're going to be moving into lesson 6.4, which discusses the Crusades. For your do now, you're going to carefully read the text and answer the question, according to the text, what three classes of people did feudalism create in the medieval period? The text says as follows. The Middle Ages is a period in European history from about the 400s to 1400 AD. During these years, also known as the medieval period, Europe evolved from ancient to modern times. The Roman Empire was divided into many smaller kingdoms. Most kings had little control over their kingdoms. As a result, hundreds of vassals with titles like prince, duke, and count became independent rulers of their own land. Their territories were known as fiefs. They ruled like kings through a form of government known as feudalism. The feudal system of government created two main classes of people. The ruling class governed the peasants and engaged in the fighting. The peasants or serfs worked the land to support themselves and their rulers. There was also a third group of people, the clergy, which served the church. The church was the main force that kept Europe together during the Middle Ages. Church leaders took over many functions of government after the Roman Empire collapsed. Most Europeans were Christian. The church had great power over its people. It is very wealthy and owned a lot of land. It provided education and encouraged literacy. It also administered justice and created hospitals for the sick. The medieval period is often remembered for the Crusades, a series of holy wars in which Christian armies sought to take control of the Holy Lands of Palestine away from the Muslim forces. But the High Middle Ages were also a period of achievement. Great stone cathedrals were built to glorify God throughout Europe. Writers and painters created great works, some of which are among history's finest. At this time, please pause your video and answer your do now question. All right, so your answer should be something along the lines of the ruling class, the peasants/serfs, and the clergy. Let's go ahead and jump into our context. So our context looks a little bit different today because we're actually going to be starting off with a document. This was written by Pope Urban II, and he's giving the following speech to the Council of Clermont in France in 1095. His audience was about 300 clerics or religious leaders who would then take his message back to the people in their churches. Document A reads as follows. Your brethren, fellow Christians, who live in the East, or the Byzantine Empire, are in urgent need of your help. As most of you have heard, the Turks and Arabs have attacked the Christians in that land and have occupied more and more of their land. They have killed and captured many and have destroyed the churches and devastated the empire. On this account I, or rather the Lord, beg you as Christ's messengers to persuade all people of whatever rank, foot soldiers and knights, poor and rich, to carry aid promptly to those Christians and to destroy that vile race from the lands of our friends. Moreover, Christ commands this. All who die by the way, whether by land or by sea, or in battle against the pagans, shall have immediate remission of sins. This I grant them through the power of God with which I am invested. Let those who for a long time have been robbers now become knights. Let those who have been serving as mercenaries for small pay now obtain the eternal reward. Let those who go not delay the journey, but rent their lands and collect money for their expenses. As soon as winter is over and spring comes, let them eagerly set out on the way with God as their guide. So, document A is a speech, right? And it's supposed to be a speech that motivates action. So the question I want you to consider is how might this source be useful in providing evidence for how people in medieval Europe would act and that would lead them into the Crusades, right? So I want you to consider that. And now we're going to move on to our options for which provides the best reason why the Crusades might have started based on document A. So option A says, because at this time, Christian faith was widely practiced, Europeans would be inclined or willing to follow the words of the Pope, who they thought spoke for God on earth. Option B, the Pope is the powerful head of the Christian church, and he gave a speech to his religious leaders. Clermont was in France, so the Pope had traveled far from Rome to give this speech. So again, you want to choose which of the following options provides the best reasoning for why the Crusades might have started based on document A. So I want you to pause the video at this time and answer that question and explain your reasoning on your worksheet. Let's see how you did. Option A is going to provide the most relevant analysis on the motivation of the Europeans to act as their Pope is wishing and as he's commanding, basically. Option B's analysis is accurate and true, but it's not relevant as to why the war might start. So if you have something a little bit different, go back and look at your reasoning and see how it lines up with this exemplar response. And then we're going to move on and define some terms. The main thing that we need to understand before we continue in this lesson is what the Crusades are. And the definition is a series of holy wars where European Christians and Turkish Muslims fought over the Byzantine and Arabian land. That sounds all well and good, but let's see what that actually looks like. So if we look at the geographical context, the map on the left should be pretty familiar to you guys. It's the previous Roman Empire where it splits. The Western Roman Empire is obviously on the left-hand side, and the Eastern, later known as the Byzantine Empire, is on the right. On the right-hand side, you have a different map that shows the Arab Empire at its greatest extent from around 700 to 850 CE or AD, depending on your preference. If you look closely at the map on the right, you'll also see a slightly lighter area that shows the Byzantine Empire. This is again the remainder of the Eastern Roman Empire after a portion of it has been taken over by the Arab Empire. So consider how big the Roman Empire was at its height compared to the Arab Empire here, right? They're both pretty large, and the Arab Empire specifically is really very large. The Eastern Roman Empire continued after the fall of Rome and became known as the Byzantine Empire. And just as in the West, the Eastern Roman Empire practiced Christianity, but it did not practice Roman Catholicism. It practiced a branch of Christianity that we would consider Eastern Orthodox, which we won't get too much into, but it's slightly different. In the late medieval period, the expanding Muslim caliphates began to attack the Byzantine lands, and Western European Christians decided that they needed to respond. So again, the people responding to this quote-unquote threat are the Western Christians, not the ones in the Byzantine Empire. So let's take a look at the Crusades themselves. There are 9 Crusades during the medieval era. Religion is providing the initial purpose for the Crusades, but it doesn't ultimately stay that way. A lot of it really is to take over land. So at this time, what I want you to do is put the Crusades dates in order on your worksheet. So the first crusade happened at 1096 to 1099. So I want you to find which date would come next and use process of elimination to determine when each of the 9 crusades were. So go ahead and pause your video at this time and complete that activity. All right, let's review. So the first crusade happens from 1096 to 1099. The second happens from 1147 to 1149. The third happens from 1189 to 1192. The fourth happens from 1202 to 1204. The fifth happens from 1217 to 1221. The sixth happens from 1228 to 1229. The seventh happens from 1248 to 1254. The eighth crusade takes place in 1270. And the ninth takes place in 1271 to 1272. If this is not how your worksheet is listing the crusades, please pause the video at this time and correct those dates. So again, we don't have time to really go over each of these, particularly because there are 9. If you'd like more information, I'm going to provide the link for the crash course video on the Crusades. It's really great, and I know you guys like the crash course videos. He does use a couple of bad words in this one, so watch it at your discretion. But it is a pretty good overview of the Crusades if you want more information there. So let's go ahead and complete our document analysis today. Our DBQ is, how did the Crusades affect the lives of people in Western Europe? Document B. Fulcher of Chartres was a French priest who composed the Latins in the East. Fulcher later served Baldwin I, a Christian king of Jerusalem, as a historian and scholar. He died in about 1127 in Jerusalem. We who were Occidentals now have been made Orientals. He who was a Roman or a Frank is now an inhabitant of Jerusalem. We have already forgotten the places of our birth. Some Christians here already possess homes and servants, which they have received through inheritance. Some have taken wives, not of their own people. Different languages, now made common, become known to both races. Those who were strangers to Jerusalem now live here in the Arab land. Those who were poor, here God makes them rich. Those who had few coins, here possess countless bezants. Those who had not had a villa, here, by the gift of God, already possess a city. Therefore, why should one who has found the East so favorable return to the West? So I want you to take a step back to the attribution. And I want you to consider, what does the source line suggest the Europeans did when they got to the Middle East? Do they stick around? Do they leave, go fight in the Middle East, and then go back to the West? And I want you to also consider, why would Fulcher's audience, the other Europeans, care about this? What message is he saying? How are the people from Western Europe who have moved to the Middle East, how are they living? And is he setting this up as it's better or worse than life in Western Europe? So I want you to take this time to pause the video, create your central idea, and answer the questions on your worksheet.